to do this with the family since you can't have the kids around.
Is there any way you can move the screen? Because all I see is Joel's nose and forehead. If you can lower it a little bit. There you go. Perfect. Okay, perfect. You want to see the girls? I'm just going to show your heads.
Hi, girls.
Yeah, Uncle Joel.
Hi, ladies.
That's Uncle Joel.
It's Tio Abuelo.
No, it's Tia Abuelo, not Uncle Joe.
Okay, Uncle Joel.
No. It was,
Okay. All right. Need you guys to. All right. So let me see. I'm going to ask you a question, and then I'm going to push mute so you don't have all the background noise. And that way we can listen to you without it recording my voice. It is recording.
it is recording.
Okay, ready? So, Joel, what flashman story would you like to begin with today?
I should probably start at the beginning with the name of the flashman. Okay, J.J. Flashman, my grandfather, was born in Lithuania, in Vilna, around 1868 or 69. He went to Liverpool, England on his way to the U.S. when he was about 20 years old. So that's 1869. And there, his name was Hervich or Hervich. And there he changed his name to Flashman because Flashman was a literary character in the book Tom Brown's School Days, which was the rage in England in the 1880s. So he stayed there a year, changed his name to Flashman, and then he went to Boston in 1889, maybe 1890. And then he brought over his entire family, starting with his sister, Hava, who was married at the time to Abe Bierce. And supposedly they already had 2 children when they came. And then he brought over his 2 brothers, Reuben and Simon. And finally, his parents, Solomon and Rose, around 1898, 1899, along with his youngest sister, Sarah. Now, unfortunately, his father died a year later. He was around the early 60s. And so his mother, of course, took on the name Flashman. She lived for 31 more years. On her tombstone, it says she's 98. But I question that because that would have made her about 50 when she had her young child.
Uncle, where's your wine glass? Maybe you can adjust it again or move back a little bit.
Well, how does that affect the sound?
Well, it doesn't, but it would be nice to see you instead of your wine.
You don't have to see me.
Here he is.
Okay, perfect. Okay, please continue.
Okay, so as I said, I'm skeptical of the fact that she was 98 when she died in 1931. Because by the Jewish calendar, the year is shorter. So if they counted up the year, she might have come out with 8 or 9 more years than she really was. I'll let her be 90, but not much more than that. She was the one who, when she arrived, and of course my grandfather was already married to Dora Hartstone, who was from Hungary, and her son Reuben was married to another Hungarian, Sarah Zathbury. And she said at that time, if she had been around, she never would have allowed their marriages. Because the Jewish tribes, the so-called, they all had dislikes for each other. The Germans, of course, hated all the Jews. And the Hungarians, they disliked the Glitziana, who were from like Austria, Romania. The Poles didn't like the Glitziana, and the Russians didn't like the Hungarians. And when they were starting out as immigrants, each of those countries would have their own societies. So that my grandfather, he had to give in and join the Hungarian Society in Boston, where my grandmother's family was prominent. Her name was Hartstein or Hartenstein, which means heart of stone. And those names came from Maria Theresa in the early, was it the 1800s? She forced all the Jews to take on surnames. And they were contrasting names like Goldberg, Rosenfield, Heartstone, Heart of Stone. So you could distinguish, you could know who was a Jew by their surname. Before that, you only used the name of your father. Like my great grandfather, the same Shalom, his name was Shalom ben Sion, Shalom the son of Zion. And incidentally, he was remembered, of course, almost by every family had a Sidney B, like Sidney B. Flashman. There was Sidney Flashman, son of Reuben. There was Sidney Cohen, son of Sarah. And there was Silas B., son of Simon. Even Stanley Herson is named for him. And Helen anglicized it by calling him Stanley Bension. Bension is an anglicization of Ben-Sion. And even your cousin Bernie Saul Flashman is the reverse. He is also named for him.
How's the bath going?
I'm blowing bubbles.
This is the kitchen.
All right, so shall we jump? You want
Hello.
Hi.
That's Grammy. There's Grammy. All right, so now do you want to tell us a Shapiro story?
No, not yet. I'll tell you the Heartstone story.
Okay.
Because we'll make these parallels. The Heartstones came to Boston in 1884. My grandmother was 9 years old, Dora Hartstein. And she came with her brother, Walter. There were only two, plus their grandmother, Haya, for whom your mother is named. And all the Helens in the family are named after her. She was a great favorite of my grandmother's, her grandmother, Haya. She died in 1906. And so that even my uncle Herbert, who was born that year, was named after her. And then when Helen was born, she named her after her. Now when they were on the ship, they came from Hungary. They had so much seasickness. My great grandfather, Elias Hartstone, was so sick that his wife, Rose, thought he was going to die. And the worst thing for Jews at that time would be to be thrown overboard. If you died on the ship, you had to be thrown over into the sea. So she cried through most of the trip, but he survived, of course, and he lived to be 94. He outlived her, of course, by many years. And then when they got to Boston, they had 5 more children. Harry, who originally was named Aaron in 85. Frank, who was originally named Abraham in 87. Annie in 89, Bob in 91, who was originally named Samuel, and Jenny, who died as an infant. She was probably
Yeah, you're not reading anything. You're not reading anything. This is all from your memory, right?
This is all from my memory. When I said their names were formally such and such, why did that happen? Well, Uncle Walter, who became the first lawyer in the family, he married a woman who was from English, I think English Jewish stock. She was 11 years older than him, and she was assimilated. Her stepmother was Christian. So she had very little interest in perpetuating anything Jewish. So when they were married, I think in around 1906, she made her brothers-in-law change their names to more English names, and her husband included, who was originally called Isaac. They would change to Walter, Harry, Frank, and Robert. And Hartenstein became Heartstone. Now, Uncle Walter he had lost his leg when he was 19 years old. So that would have been around 1898. He lost it from gangrene. So he was not a great catch. And Pauline was 11 years older. So she obviously was in her 30s when she married, and she was not a great catch, but they were students together. They studied for the law. In those days, you didn't really go to law school. You studied under the aegis of a university. I think it was Boston University. And then you took the exams. So they married, and he was a little worried that his parents would be very upset because she was sort of an aristocrat. Her father had fought in the Civil War, so he earned his citizenship that way. And he went to my grandmother Dora and said, "What are we going to do about Mama and Papa for this marriage?" And my grandmother said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of it." So they were very bonded. They married, and she had, of course, very little to do with the family. She denied that she was actually Jewish to her own children, and said that she was christened at the Charles Street Church in Boston. But it's a known fact that her father was Jewish. And eventually she had belonged to Temple Israel, which was the Reformed temple in Boston. She had a fight with them and walked out and joined the Unitarian Church in Newton. Her own children, and I have proof of this from another totally different story, did not know that their mother was Jewish. So there goes, you can tell your children anything and they believe it, because who's going to contest it?
So now this is this what leads to the Cohens? The Cohens?
No, that's the Cohens are on the Flashman side.
So do we know any of our Heartstone cousins?
Oh, sure. We know all of them.
Well, you do. I don't know about we.
Do you have the family tree that I set up years ago?
Somewhere.
Because that would make it easier for you to follow.
But all the Flashmans are so the relationship between the Flashmans and all the Heartstone cousins is the cousins and in-laws.
Only the Jacob Flashmans are related to the Heartstones.
Oh, okay. So the Cohens are a different
The
flashman.
Cohens are from the Flashman side. Sarah Cohen was my grandfather's youngest sister.
And Jacob is your grandfather?
Jacob was my grandfather.
Okay.
So just think, with all this information, the girls will be able to say they know about their great grandfather.
All right.
No,
Thank-
actually, 3 greats. Great.
All right. I got to get them out of the bath, but we'll do this again
Okay,
next.
we'll do it next Sunday on your mother's birthday. Thank you.
That'll be June
Bye.
14th.
Bye. Bye, Olivia. You're all cleaned up.
Hi, Sylvie.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. I'm going to stop it recording and then you can say bye to the girls. Hold on.